Story 1: The Shadow in the Mirror. It was supposed to be a typical Friday night sleepover for Jenna, Lisa, and Emily. Jenna's house was a charming, old colonial with creaky floors and a large, eerie attic that had always fascinated them. The girls were excited to spend the night together, watching movies and having fun. The evening started out with the usual excitement: movie marathons, endless snacks, and silly games. By around midnight, they decided to play a classic game of truth or dare. Lisa, known for her love of spooky tales, dared Jenna to go upstairs to the attic bathroom and say Bloody Mary 3 times in front of the mirror. They giggled nervously. None of them really believed in the legend, but it was a dare. Jenna, feeling a mix of bravado and fear, accepted the challenge. She grabbed a flashlight, since the upstairs hallway lights were flickering, casting strange shadows on the walls. Emily and Lisa followed her halfway up the stairs, whispering encouragements and trying to suppress their giggles. The attic bathroom was small and dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. Jenna stood in front of the old, ornate mirror that had been there as long as she could remember. The air was cool, and the shadows seemed to dance around her as she began the chant. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. At first, nothing happened. Jenna let out a nervous laugh and turned to leave. But then, the bathroom door slammed shut with a deafening bang, and the light bulb flickered violently before going out completely. Jenna's heart raced, and she was plunged into darkness. She fumbled for the door handle, but it was stuck. Her breathing grew panicked as she felt a presence behind her. In the faint glow of the moonlight seeping through the small attic window, Jenna saw something in the mirror: a shadowy figure, tall and indistinct, standing right behind her. Its eyes glowed with a chilling light that pierced the darkness. Jenna screamed, pounding on the door, calling out for her friends. From the other side, Emily and Lisa's voices were muffled, their attempts to open the door futile. The mirror's reflection began to shimmer and distort, and the shadow seemed to move closer. Finally, the door burst open and Emily and Lisa rushed in, their faces pale with terror. The light flickered back on and the shadow vanished. Jenna was trembling, her face drained of color. The 3 friends stumbled out of the bathroom, their laughter from earlier now replaced by uneasy silence. Back downstairs, the atmosphere was thick with fear. They tried to convince themselves it was just a prank of their imaginations. But as the night wore on, the house seemed to come alive with unsettling noises. The old floors creaked with footsteps that weren't theirs, doors rattled, and the temperature dropped noticeably. At about 3 a.m., Jenna awoke to the sound of static from the TV in the living room. The screen was filled with a snowy pattern. As she sat up, she saw the reflection of the same shadowy figure in the screen's static. She screamed, waking Emily and Lisa, who rushed in to find her shaking uncontrollably. The rest of the night was a blur of nervous whispers and sleepless moments. By dawn, they were all on edge. The next morning, Jenna's parents were puzzled by their pale faces and jittery behavior. The girls never spoke of what happened that night, and none of them ever stayed over at Jenna's house again. Story 2: The Old Woman in the Attic. It was Sarah's 15th birthday, and she decided to celebrate with a sleepover at her grandmother's house. The house was an old Victorian mansion, located on the edge of town and surrounded by dense woods. The girls, Sarah, Emma, Lily, and Mia, were thrilled by the house's spooky charm. After a fun-filled evening of eating, playing games, and watching movies, Sarah's grandmother, a kind but somewhat eccentric woman, warned them to stay away from the attic. She said it was too dangerous and full of old junk. The girls exchanged knowing glances but agreed to respect her wishes. Once Grandma went to bed, the girls, fueled by a mix of curiosity and rebellious excitement, decided to explore the attic. They crept up the narrow, creaky stairs, using their phones' flashlights to light the way. At the top, they found a heavy wooden door that was partially open. They pushed it the rest of the way and stepped into the attic. The attic was filled with dusty, forgotten furniture and boxes stacked high. The air was stale, and the faint smell of mildew hung in the air. The girls giggled as they rummaged through old clothes and antiques, making up stories about their origins. Emma found a small, dusty mirror with an ornate frame, its glass slightly cloudy. She held it up and showed it to the others. As they gathered around, the mirror's reflection seemed to shimmer oddly, and a chill swept through the room. Suddenly, Lily screamed, pointing to the corner of the attic. An old rocking chair in the shadows began to move on its own, rocking back and forth in the cold air. The girls froze, their laughter dying in their throats. The chair's movement grew more pronounced, as if someone or something was sitting in it. "Someone's playing a joke," Emma said, trying to sound brave, but her voice wavered. They watched as the rocking chair continued its slow, rhythmic motion. The air grew colder, and they heard a soft, ghostly whisper, "You shouldn't be here." Panic set in, and they scrambled towards the attic door. It slammed shut with a thunderous bang as they reached it, trapping them inside. The girls pounded on the door, screaming for help, but their cries were swallowed by the oppressive silence. In the chaos, Emma accidentally dropped the mirror, and it shattered into pieces on the floor. The rocking stopped abruptly, and the door creaked open just enough for them to escape. The girls fled down the stairs, their hearts racing and their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Once safely back in Sarah's room, they huddled together, trying to make sense of what happened. They heard creaking noises and the faint sound of the rocking chair in the attic for the rest of the night. When morning came, Sarah's grandmother found them pale and exhausted. She listened with a grave expression as they recounted their experience. "I should have told you sooner," Grandma said, her voice trembling. "That mirror belonged to my mother. She was obsessed with it and used to sit in that rocking chair, staring into it for hours. After she passed away, strange things started happening in this house. I thought it best to keep it hidden." The girls never returned to the attic, and Sarah's grandmother eventually moved the mirror away. The house remained quiet, but the chilling memory of that night stayed with them forever. Story 3: The Sleepwalker. Jacob had always been a sleepwalker, but it had never caused any serious trouble until the night of his friend Alex's sleepover. Alex's house was a modern, two-story home located near the edge of a sprawling forest. The boys were excited about their sleepover, which included video games, snacks, and ghost stories. As the night wore on, Jacob fell into a deep sleep while Alex, along with their friends, Tyler and Ben, stayed up late watching horror movies. Around 2 a.m., Alex noticed Jacob getting up and walking towards the window in a trance-like state. "Hey, Jacob," Alex whispered, but Jacob didn't respond. His eyes were open, but they had a vacant, distant look. Alex, familiar with Jacob's sleepwalking, got up to gently guide him back to bed. But as Alex approached, he noticed something alarming through the window. A tall, shadowy figure with glowing eyes was visible in the darkness of the forest. The figure seemed to be watching Jacob intently. Alex's heart raced as he tried to wake Jacob, but he remained unresponsive. Desperate, Alex tried to pull Jacob away from the window, but Jacob resisted, mumbling incoherently. As Alex struggled, the shadowy figure seemed to move closer to the house. The darkness of the forest appeared to shift and swirl around the figure, adding to the sinister atmosphere. Finally, Alex managed to lead Jacob away from the window and back to his sleeping bag. But Jacob's sleepwalking continued. He woke up again, this time unlocking the back door and stepping outside into the cold, dark forest. Alex, now fully alarmed, grabbed a flashlight and ran after Jacob, calling his name. The forest was dense and foreboding, with the trees casting long, eerie shadows in the beam of the flashlight. The shadowy figure was still there, moving closer as Jacob walked deeper into the woods. Alex reached Jacob and tried to wake him, shaking him and calling out to him. Jacob's eyes finally cleared, and he looked around, confused and frightened. The shadowy figure seemed to retreat into the darkness, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Alex and Jacob hurried back to the house, where Tyler and Ben were anxiously waiting. They locked all the doors and windows and tried to calm down. The rest of the night was filled with tense silence and the occasional creak of the house settling. In the morning, Jacob had no recollection of his nighttime wanderings. Alex, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent had been watching them from the forest. The sleepwalking incidents continued for a few more nights, always involving the same shadowy figure in the distance. The boys never spoke of the figure again, but the unsettling memory of that night lingered with them. Jacob's sleepwalking gradually less,